Good evening.
Good evening.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Javersak. I am a retired. That's the hardest part is after I said retired to get the smile back on my face. History professor at West Liberty State College. My interest in wheeling history began back in about 1975. I was a graduate student at West Virginia University. Those were in the days that was called BC, before couches. Yeah. So, you know, you have to get the right time. And I had finished all my coursework and I had to do a dissertation. And I wrote out this wonderful proposal for a dissertation that is now quite common in higher education. It was to do an oral history of an ethnic group. And since I came from the northern panhandle, I grew up in Weirton, I thought maybe doing an oral history of Polish Americans. Well, so I started taking around to the faculty at West Virginia University, and they said, gee, that's a nice idea, I won't do it. And that's a nice idea, but I won't do it. And as some of you who maybe have been in my classes will know, I'm not the most patient person. So about the third time I went to the chairman and I said, all right, what the hell will you let me do? And he said, go down and see Dr. Steele. And I went down to Dr. Steele and I said, you have an idea for my dissertation. He said, I'll tell you what, there's this whole bunch of information over in the West Virginia collection on a group called the Ohio Valley Trades and Labor Assembly. Why don't you see what you can do with that? Well, that's what I did. And for the last 35 years, I have been talking about or writing about the history of wheeling because that was my introduction. Now, the Ohio Valley Trades and Labor Assembly is the oldest central labor group in the United States. It was authenticated by the AFL-CIO back in 1992 based upon the work that I had done. But why it's important for us is that tonight you're not in a Carnegie library. And the reason you're not in the Carnegie library has to do with the Ohio Valley Trades and Labor Assembly. Now, that's a story for a little later in the hour. What I want to begin with is the fact that libraries right now are really under attack. And the reason they're under attack is taxpayer dollars. And it's not just in West Virginia, it's all across the United States. I went golfing today over in Carrollton, Ohio, and the signs along Route 43, save our libraries. The Ohio County Public Library happens to be one of the better funded because of some laws that were written years ago, which, by the way, are being questioned by the Kanawha County because they want a different funding ratio or however that's done, which, if the court agrees with them, would reduce the amount of money that we have for libraries. As far as I'm concerned, there are two buildings in any community that are iconic when it comes to democracy. One is the courthouse, and the fact that you've got that across the street. I mean, it's the courthouse where we go for our death certificates, birth certificates, marriage licenses, for our property to be assessed, to pay all of those bills, to pay speeding tickets, to go there if your neighbor's cat, was accidentally shot by, an irate neighbor or whatever. And that's a real iconic building. The other one is a public library. Many of us have grown up with public libraries because they're essential to where we learned a whole bunch of things. And I have, just as an introduction, 3 little quotations about public libraries. Well, let me put that. I may have to, there they are. This comes from an English writer by the name of Richard Sheridan, and he's talking to a woman, and this is what he says. Madam, a circulating library in a town is an evergreen tree of diabolical knowledge. It blossoms throughout the year, and depend on it, that they who are so fond of handling the leaves will long for the fruit at last. Another English writer by the name of Herbert Samuel said, a library is thought in cold storage. And Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was asked to write a little poem for the dedication of the Boston Library in 1885, said, the library is ever the open gate. This palace is the people's own. You don't have to be a member of a political party to come in. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be poor. You can, anything you are, you can come into the library. It's for you. And, you know, it was Shakespeare who said, a little learning is a dangerous thing, so drink deep. And this is, anybody who will tell you that if you want to control people, the best way to control them is to limit what's available to them in terms of books, in terms of information. That's why slave owners had a law passed that you can't teach a slave to read. If you remember when the Nazis came into power, one of the first things that they did was to burn the books. Okay? A library needs to be a place where you can learn about things. And in the days before television and the internet, this was one of the places that you can learn it. And let's remember that there are a lot of people who don't have internet or don't have cable. And if you've ever been in this library during the day and you go up to the section where the computers, you'll see that they're all filled. Because that provides access for people. You know, a good computer might run $1,000, $1,200 or more dollars. There are a lot of folks who can't afford that. They can't afford a cable service or some kind of provider for that thing. So libraries play a very important role. But libraries aren't new. The oldest library that we've been able to find was in Syria, 2500 BCE, before current era. Okay, you know, we don't use BC and whatever anymore. I don't know, before current era, 2500. So libraries are at least 4,500 years old. I was thinking the other day when I was trying to put some thoughts together, it could be a little more difficult when you've retired, you know, because the thoughts don't always come to you. And I was thinking, you know, I know when I was a freshman in college in the fall of 1963, I ran across the name of an Assyrian leader by the name of Ashurbanipal. That name mean anything to you? Ashurbanipal. Well, Ashurbanipal was a king of Nubia in about the 7th century BC. And when they excavated his ruined city in the 1850s, they found a library of 30,000 clay tablets. Okay? So we have that. And, you know, in the United States, if you look at if you've ever read anything about the Sons of Liberty, in August of 1768, during the run-up to the opposition to the Stamp Act, one of the people who was bullied was